It is time for our big stat. It's brought to you by Walgreens, and what a season it was for Big Ten volleyball. Had fully half of the Final Four with Wisconsin and Nebraska. Huskers, of course, played for the national championship, had the National Player of the Year, the National Coach of the Year, set the record for the most attended women's sporting event of all time. I would call that a memorable 4 months, and Emily Ehman had one of the best seats for that, of course, calls so many games for the Big Ten Network. Great to have you with us, and there's kind of no rest for the weary, right? We just keep on going.
Yeah, we get right back at it. It's the off season, but there's still a lot to talk about, and luckily we have this today to kind of roll through and get some excitement built up.
Right, we're going to go through the scheduling formats in just a second, but kind of bring us up to date for those maybe who missed out on some of the portal activity, coaching changes, that kind of stuff. Bring us up to date on what we might have missed since that national championship game.
The transfer portal was one of the biggest things that was talked about in the offseason. You have Taylor Landfair from Minnesota, the 2022 Big Ten Player of the Year. She's headed to an already stacked Nebraska team. Allie Batenhorst, an outside on that Nebraska team, is headed to USC, who really desperately needs her after Skylar Fields, the All-American, left. You also got Maggie Mendelson, a middle from Nebraska, sat the bench for a lot, but a lot of times when she came in, she was a consistent piece that is going to play a really big factor on that Penn State team. Northwestern hired a new coach that they're really excited about, had a really great season at Grand Canyon last year. And then, of course, we got 4 new teams coming in that are going to bring so much history and competitiveness to an already ultra-competitive Big Ten conference.
And those 4 new teams segue to why we're here today. And there's so many questions about how will the new schedule work with 18 teams in the Big Ten. And we're starting to get some of the answers. We're not going to reveal the actual schedules today. Those will come in due time. But we're going to get the schedule rotation. And here are kind of the overarching philosophies. This was done in conjunction with stakeholders on every campus. Each sport considered separately based on differences in the postseason and NCAA tourney selection. For volleyball, overarching factors, academics, geography and travel, traveling before classes start, during breaks, playing 2 schools that are close to one another the same weekend. Competitive balance for the 2 plays is big, including historical success of the programs, and then a general philosophy of playing conference foes more rather than less. So let's take a look at what this means practically. Again, we don't have the actual schedules. We're going to show you who everyone is playing and where they will be playing them next year. So let's start with the Fighting Illini. We're going to go school by school. It's a 20-game schedule. You play 17 schools once and 3 twice. So in Illinois' case, that's Indiana, Nebraska, and Northwestern. As far as the West Coast schools, the Eastern and Central time zone teams will have just 1 trip to the Pacific time zone. So it's safe to assume those road games against Oregon and Washington will be played on the same trip. All right, let's look at Indiana. They had a good year, 11-9 in the conference. They go Ohio State and Purdue twice in addition to the Illini. What else stands out with the Hoosiers, Emily?
Well, the Hoosiers are really on the come up. This team is going to search for their first NCAA bid since 2010. And what stands out to me is really those home and away, the double matchups. You have Illinois, Ohio State, and Purdue. Those are other 3 teams that are still going to be fighting for the NCAA tournament. So those double matches for the Hoosiers are going to be so big this season because they essentially have to win those in order to hope for a bid for the NCAA tournament. And then, of course, on those other matchups, some of those big ones, try to steal a few away.
Most wins in a season for them since that 2010 season that you were talking about a season ago. Let's get into the next group. Iowa. Rough season, didn't win a conference game. Jim Barnes' team will face Northwestern, Nebraska, Rutgers as its 2 plays. Barnes going into year 3 in Iowa City. Maryland, Adam Hughes' team over 500 for the 2nd straight year, first time in nearly 2 decades. Their 2 plays next season, Michigan State, Penn State, and Rutgers. They will look to improve on an 11th place finish. Michigan, first year for Aaron Virtue. They were 5-15 in conference. Michigan State, Minnesota, Ohio State, the 2 plays there. This is a program looking to bounce back, Emily.
Yeah, it's a program looking to bounce back. They did, I think, somewhat better than expected in a coach's first season. But what I love about this schedule is we still get those big rivalries with Michigan, Michigan State, and Michigan, Ohio State. I'm really glad we get 2 of those matchups. School
that's had a fair amount of success historically. Michigan State made some nice progress in Leah Johnson's 2nd year, 5-win improvement, Emily.
They've made massive jumps. They got their first ranked home win since 2017. And what that tells me for Michigan State is the Breslin Center is a tough place to play. So any of these teams that are playing Michigan State at home, they've got a tough test.
Check out Minnesota, an NCAA tournament team for the 23rd time in the last 24 seasons. They get Michigan, Ohio State, and Wisconsin as their 2 plays. Like the Spartans, who we just saw a moment ago, they've got a West Coast trip to UCLA and USC. Both of those teams, again, presumably played in conjunction with one another. That's the way these West Coast trips are going to work. Here's the schedule for the national runner-up, Nebraska. They face Wisconsin twice. You know, those are going to be heavily anticipated. The lone Penn State matchup is on the road. The lone Purdue match is at home. UCLA and USC come to them. They go to Oregon and Washington. John Cook's team was in the spotlight really all year this year. Give us an idea of what to expect from them coming up next season.
Nebraska feels like they can win another Big Ten title and get to another national championship match. And what I love about this is we still get that Wisconsin matchup twice between the two of them. It's always one of the most hyped up matches of the year. Headed into last season, it was 1 against 2 undefeateds. You hope for that this year. We'll see how it plays out. What I also like about the schedule is we get another rematch with Nebraska headed to Penn State. We saw how exciting it was last season. It was a whiteout. Penn State went up 2-0. Nebraska came storming back. I think that's one to really circle on your calendar and to get really pumped up for.
I mean, the 2 plays against Wisconsin are going to be huge. And again, that was part of the philosophy. Let's have teams that have had similar success through the years play one another more frequently, create more of those big matchups. You know that'll be huge. A Nebraska team that's played for the national title twice in the last 3 years. We'll see if they can win it next year for the first time since 2017. You mentioned Northwestern and the new head coach, Tim Nolan, coming from Grand Canyon, taking over a middle-of-the-pack team. Cats get Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin as their 2 plays. He had the Antelopes in the NCAA tourney last year. He'll try to get Northwestern going again. Ohio State missed the tournament last year, first time since 2019. Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, the 2 plays for them, Emily.
Yeah, Ohio State's trying to get back into that tournament, and similar to Indiana, their 2-play matches are kind of must-wins. They really need to get wins over Indiana, Michigan, and Minnesota as they're trying to fight their way back into the tournament.
Now let's get into the first of the new teams. Oregon is really good. They made the Elite 8 last year. You note the 2 plays. Now, this is important to note because this is the first of the new teams in the Big Ten that we've seen coming from the Pac-12. Those West Coast schools are going to play each other both home and away. So we're going to see this consistently with the old Pac-12 teams coming to the Big Ten. They will play their other former conference mates, both home and away. That cuts it down considerably, obviously, on the travel. Matt Ulmer's team going to join us a little bit later in the show, but give people an overview of a team that was 1 win away from making it to the Final Four.
Yeah, that team lost a lot of those starting pieces, but what they bring back is a lot of backups who are in the gym every day playing against the top caliber opponents. And what this team does really well is they play on the road really well, which is huge for a team that has really tough road matches this upcoming season. They have Minnesota, Penn State, Wisconsin, and then those 3 West Coast teams that are, pretty much all rivalries as they played in the same conference together. So this is a team that I think, despite losing so many pieces, is going to surprise some people.
And we're going to talk to him in a bit. I'll certainly ask him about some of the new pieces. They've done really well in the portal, so you could see Oregon, again, some star power gone, but maybe you don't miss a beat. It's hard to know, obviously, in this day and age of the portal, but a lot to be excited about for the Ducks. Let's check out Penn State. They made it to the regional semis last year. They bowed out to Wisconsin. Michigan State, Maryland, Purdue, the 2 plays. They head to UCLA, USC, and Wisconsin, get Nebraska at home. What are we expecting? Nittany Lions, always powerful. What are you looking at from them?
Penn State is a historical program, and they continue to have that expectation of doing really well. And I like their away schedule. They only play 3 teams away that made the 2023 NCAA tournament. So look for a lot of wins on the road for the Nittany Lions.
Speaking of the NCAA tournament, they obviously are the only team ever to make it every single year. 43 for 43. Pretty remarkable track record. Purdue has a good track record as well. It's not quite Penn State's NCAA tourney, but not that far off. They've been to 18 of the last 20. In addition to playing the Nittany Lions twice, they get 2 against Indiana and Rutgers, play Nebraska on the road, Wisconsin at home. Dave Shondel's crew, they're always tough. What stands out here with the Boilers?
Yeah, Purdue is always tough. It doesn't matter if they're home or away. You can never underestimate this team. They've got a really tough road schedule this year. Minnesota, Nebraska, Oregon, Penn State, and then rival Indiana. Again, not a team you can sleep on the road, and they like that challenge. They want to be challenged so that they can head into the NCAA tournament and really feel prepared.
Team that bowed out against Oregon last year in the regional semifinals, so a sneak preview of things to come there, a future conference matchup. Rutgers trying to pick up some momentum. They won 10 matches overall last year, most in more than a decade. Their two plays are Iowa, Maryland, and Purdue. Will look to climb in the standings next season. UCLA, this was a middle of the pack, Pac-12 team, Emily. Give people a quick sense for the Bruins as we look at their schedule rotation.
Yeah, this is an up-and-coming team with a coach that's in their second year now. And honestly, I'm excited that we all get a firsthand look at that deep rivalry between UCLA and USC this upcoming season that we get to see twice.
Let's talk about USC. Tourney team last year, 12-8 in the Pac-12. Again, you'll note the theme. They play all the West Coast schools twice. What should we know about the Trojans?
Well, one of the big storylines, you got Allie Batenhorst there. She's actually going to play back at Nebraska, which will be fun to watch. But head coach Brad Keller has done a phenomenal job with this team. Made the NCAA tournament last year, and you can never count them out of a match.
Washington coming off a rare down year. They missed the tourney for the first time in more than 2 decades. How do they bounce back, Emily?
Yeah, this is a team that has to just get back on their footing. Head coach Leslie Gabriel, she's in her second season now. You can never count the Huskies out. They call them the Cardiac Huskies for a reason. They are really good in some of these really difficult road environments.
And finally, Wisconsin was in the Final Four for the 4th time in 5 seasons. The 2 matchups with Nebraska, we've talked about them. Those figure to be highlights. Home matchup with Oregon should be great. Trying to reload once again. What should we know about Kelly Sheffield's team?
Well, they're going to be pretty much just as good as they were last season. Of course, they lost their 2 setters, but they're bringing in one of the highest rated setters in the entire country this upcoming season. So they're in pretty good hands there. I'm pumped for those Nebraska matches. We get that twice. We also get them against Minnesota twice in the border battle that we only got once last season. So you might look at their double play schedule and say it's really tough, but just evening things out from what we saw last year. And right now, Wisconsin, one of those teams to beat along with Nebraska.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a ton of fun. I know how excited you are in covering it day to day. I mean, the league is absolutely loaded. Can't wait to get the actual schedule. We'll sink our teeth into that here coming up. But again, I think this answered a ton of questions for people as to philosophically kind of how this is going to work. Thanks for helping us shed some light on it, Emily. Really
thanks for having me.